everybody, guess what? It's another exciting episode of reviewing Rings of Power. We're on episode 3. Everybody's excited.
Oh, thank God.
Ross more than the rest of us.
Totally excited.
Ross more than the rest of us. Let me throw up our meme for the day. And we're here to talk about what? We're here to talk about Rings of Power episode 3 and see how things are going now that Ross is here. I'm bringing up, I should have brought this up ahead of time, but I've been desperately trying to shove through the news dump so that we can get to this point. Well, we start out this episode with Arondir being hauled away by some orcs. He's been captured after his spelunking endeavors. The hot model man has now been captured by...
After mewing at the camera.
Yeah, after having been captured by vampires hauling him away.
The Monster Man orcs.
The Monster Man orcs, the claw orcs, they're massive tentacles. And there are no tentacles. I'm looking for talons.
There you go.
Apparently they've captured quite a few people and a lot of elves, which I wanted to say, wouldn't the elves be a lot more like, oh, a lot of our people are going missing? Did they just get all of them all of a sudden? Is this all of the elves that were at the tower?
Yeah, was it while they were leaving the tower to go back home? Did they just
they
how did
got
that
a big
happen?
net. They got a big net. They said racial slurs, something about knife ears or something, and they put a net on it.
As you should. Elves deserve nothing good.
I'm glad Arondir wasn't there because it would have been really awkward if they threw a net on that man.
Yeah.
What, Ross? What's your problem? But yeah,
my problem with
if we want to do a meta conversation of the episode, let's set that aside.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there. What are you leading me to? Sorry.
All good things. Galadriel wakes up on a ship. She's been rescued from the sea, the angry sea that she jumped into without any logical reasoning, and it wasn't considered a good idea. But she's hanging out with Halbrand, who suspiciously is constantly cast in dark light. But Halbrand gives her some food. I love that she gets rescued in the middle of the ocean and immediately starts shit-talking everybody.
Yeah, just starts being a real dick. You know,
as
you are
after
you get rescued from what is most certainly certain death. You just really want to get aggressive. That's how you thank them.
Well, especially the lack of gratitude seems kind of... It's like, I didn't ask to be.
She had it handled. What could you not understand about that? I don't. What?
Yeah, she totally was doing it by herself. She was fine.
Well, she's Galadriel.
Sisters are doing it for themselves.
Sisters do it for themselves. Silver, sisters do it for themselves.
Well, don't be too excited now. Good Lord.
That's all I got for that.
Well, she gets hauled in towards the Queen Regent, Muriel? I forget her name. We're calling
Muriel.
Strong woman. And strong woman now has to face strong woman in a conversation. They have that thing, that's reminding me of, they have that moment where they go to kneel or curtsy and she goes, well, we don't do that here. And immediately I was like, this reminds me of Black Panther. Because they have that scene in Black Panther where it's like, we don't.
I didn't even think of that.
It's like they're trying to do that. We're not one of those kingdoms that everybody has to obase themselves towards the ruler of the kingdom. We're all equal, and it's like, but you're not. Numenor is deliberately not that. I'm sorry. I'm judging it according to the original content. I apologize, but it seems awkward with
it's hard to avoid.
Well, it seems awkward with a royal hierarchy that we find ourselves in a situation.
And admitted nobility, as we learn about Elendil. He's of a noble house. So how does that work? What?
Yeah, because he has that thing around his neck. that's deliberate
bag
proof
thing?
that he's.
But no, we don't show deference to those who are betters in this supposed society.
Yeah, his dirty bag.
That we've denoted that they are better.
The thing is that even if they're like, we don't do the whole bowing thing here, they'd still have some sort of like salute or curtsy or something of that nature where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm acknowledging that you are the sovereign of our nation.
You don't have to kowtow. You don't have to do the Japanese apology. But good lord.
Yeah, there's no placing your face
bow your
on the
head,
floor.
put your hand on your heart. Well, whatever.
Maybe a nice firm handshake, a Mr. President, something.
Well, immediately they introduce themselves and she starts making demands. She wants a ship,
as you do,
or she wants passage to Middle Earth immediately because she's in charge, because she's more important than the rest of you. And everyone's like, no.
I think this was
the
the
thing
scene
is
for
that
me.
you just got rescued. Sorry, Ross. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is the scene for me where I was like, oh, they cannot write her like a normal person, like at all. Like what? And my girlfriend said, she's like, I think they want to write her like cool, like hero boy. Like I think
Yeah.
you mentioned that too, Rhett. Like 'cause she said the same. She's like, it really feels like they're wanting to write like how you would write a young hero, like in a young adult,
like a
even like
firebrand,
a higher elementary school novel. And it's like, that's not even how they act, though. Like, that's horrendous. Like, I mean, number one, she's not a kid. She's like millennia old at this point. I mean, at least centuries, according to this show. Like, so when are you not a kid as an elf? Like, how long does that take? Apparently, she's still just a crazy young person.
Yeah.
It's just
somebody who's thousands of years old. She's just young. She's still learning.
I
She's
guess like how not to be an open dickhead to people that saved you. Like what?
A lot of spit and
the thing
vinegar.
is that you come in and you say, "Hey, I'm totally glad that you saved me. Thank you so much. We were lost at sea. I'm just trying to get back to Middle Earth. Is there somebody that could, possibly take me there?"
Well, let me
and
lead
there's
you.
been
I
other
realize it's an
media.
imposition. I'm not trying to be inconvenient here. I'll is there something that I can do to help out? Something that shows that you're grateful and that you're willing to work with these people. But no, it's like, give me a ship. I need to get out of here. What? No.
Let me lead you to the next comments where she starts to talk about how amazing and like all of her accolades. She's the commander of the Northern armies.
Commander of the North, yeah.
How awesome she is. And then she's like, give me a ship. And then they go, well, we haven't, I guess, granted transport to an elf in like decades or whatever. And she goes, well, you have these, this is one of my more favorite lines. Let me see if I can't get it. It's something like, you have these lands because the elves gave it to you, or something like that, which is deliberately not true. It's been generations since a ship of Numenor was permitted to make a journey on an elf's behalf. It is because of the elves that you were given this island. That's no. The gods decided to give them the island. They created. This is literally sort of an allegory, even though Tolkien hated allegory, of like Atlantis. The gods granted this to mortal men. Elrond.
Well, didn't she even say that as they walked in? I swear she said that.
Yeah, it was just the nerve to be like, it's because of the elves that you were granted this island. It's like,
you're right. She does say that.
Well, it's more like it's because of the heroic humans and what they did during the conflict that the gods granted this to them as a reward.
They were granted that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is as far out, because they can't go to Valinor, this is the next best thing. And it seems so condescending. Like, you only have this because of elves. And it's like, okay, well, you've just pissed off the entire group there. Who's all just, there's a lot of murmuring in the background. Like, who's this awful bint? like, who's this woman?
Yeah, the thing is that all she would have had to do is say, we've been friends with the humans of Numenor for countless generations. I knew Elros. So she could have fallen back on the the traditional friendship that had existed between, uh, you know, elves and men at this the elves and men well, the elves and the men of Numenor for countless generations. She could have, appealed to that and said, look, I'm not asking for you to join my army or, my march or all that. I'm just trying to get back to Middle Earth. I could use a bit of help. But no, it's you only have this stuff because of the elves.
It's
And
once
now
again,
you spit in my face and now you expect me to do you a favor?
yeah, yes. She is an aggressive, unlikable character who makes demands and puts on airs and has expectations that you go along with, and she comes across abrasive in everything she does. Like, I don't want to necessarily blame Morphet Clark. I have to believe that the writing is just so horrific that the directors of the show, the creators of this show, were like, okay, I want you to go out there and I want you to piss everyone off. I want everybody to dislike you. I want you to constantly have a sour face and be eyeballing everybody.
Okay, in the scene you just did, could you go back and redo it, only this time be meaner and more condescending? You did
Yes,
great,
I
but
can.
Like as she's talking, just go
more.
condescending, like it's just trying to get her to get the right tone. Like,
Well, and the Queen Regent.
Pretend you're at one of those coffee places and the barista totally screwed up your order. No.
Well, anyway, the Queen Regent responds with basically, "We earn this with our blood," sort of thing. And
Yeah.
of all people, Halbrand tries to smooth it over because he's not a psychopath. Like, don't you think with all of her
Well,
years
he
she would have
is.
learned tact in some aspect? Well, Jason, we don't know anything about Halbrand. Keep it in your pants.
That's
yeah.
true.
He
That's
is just
true.
a human man.
What do you mean, Jason? Who is this
Oh,
Halbrand
okay.
that you think he's like this? He seems like a great guy.
He has a fancy, dirty
Normal
pouch around his neck. Calm
Where he keeps
yourself.
his stash, boy. Don't you forget it.
Okay, where he keeps his stash. Don't. If you're gonna meta this, we're gonna second guess everything that happens in this.
Sorry.
Anyway, they're basically like, they're not gonna let her leave, and then she's like, by one way or another, I will depart, almost implying she's gonna start murdering her way off the island.
Yeah.
See, the Noldor were responsible for the kinslaying. I think that she, would totally
Not the
kill
first
a
time.
human. Granted, Galadriel wasn't part of the kinslaying. I know that. I'm not saying she was.
Well, you almost have a moment where there's like a challenge between the two, where she turns to the queen and
Yeah.
she's like, I'm gonna leave whether you like it or not.
You
And the
think
queen is like, you can try. And it's like, what
Well,
did you write two unreasonable men and then just put women in the in
Yeah.
their place? Like, what was the intention
the thing
here?
is that we've already seen Galadriel kill an ice troll single-handedly.
Well,
And we've already seen
a
Galadriel
guy
basically
threw
decide
her.
to jump off the ship and swim back to Middle Earth all by herself.
Well, she is a god unto herself.
I just sit there and think there is nothing at this point that can stop her. If she had decided to lay waste to Numenor by herself, she would have done it. They've already written her to be such an uber warrior that there is nothing that the Numenorians could have done. They could have been summoned their entire army, and she would have just wasted them all at this point. There is nothing that is going to stop her.
Well, of all
They're so
people,
poor writers that they've basically written One Punch Man into Galadriel.
agree, but made One Punch Man an unlikable main character. So the whole show is you're
Yes.
watching somebody you dislike insult people and imply no one can stop me and I'm leaving if I want to.
I'm gonna do what I want, Dad.
I'm gonna do what I want, Dad. Screw you,
Grounded.
Queen Muriel.
One ring.
I immediately had this idea of like Braveheart and how the rumors turned William Wallace to the point where he's like, yes, I've heard the rumors. You know, I could shoot lightning out of my arse. And it's like, she could. She might be able to.
Probably could. Yeah. Why not?
Well,
Galadriel could.
Halbrand tries to smooth things over so that they don't just try and murder everybody right now, and she has to kill the whole island. And he's seen as the more tactful individual of the two. And he's like, well, why don't we wait while you deliberate for a few days? Was it deliberation? Isn't that what he implied? I can't remember exactly. But they're going to hold her for 3 days, and she's restricted to the palace grounds, and no one puts Galadriel into a corner. I can tell you that right now. Because immediately she goes, I will not be a prisoner. And it's like, well, they could kill you. But yes.
She has plot armor at this point. No, they couldn't.
Yeah, she's got mega plot armor. There's no threat that can't...
She would just waltz through them.
Yeah, she's a godlike being in representation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have Elendil, who's Captain Man, Holarov. Just as an aside, because it would be easy to point out the inaccuracies and the story problems in the show. But Elendil is Elendil the Tall, if you recall. He was like 7 feet tall in the books. He is not that, and he should be a commanding, dominating presence. Instead, he's like a crap captain of a ship. He's like high. He's like high end.
Forgettable.
He's high end soldier man. As a spoiler,
very retiring, very like background character.
Well, as a spoiler, he's in the room with a guy who will kill him later. So that's exciting.
What? Oh,
I mean, Halbrand, the great hero, reasonable man. Halbrand gives him a hug and steals his like dagger, and it's long. It's not like
no,
tiny
he steals
dagger.
Nobody noticed he didn't have this long ass dagger missing all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, Galadriel's dagger.
So it was Galadriel's dagger that was hanging off of his belt.
Yes, I know.
This is where it gets nonsense. He totally pockets it, and then he hands it to Galadriel in front of everybody.
Well, it's like, wouldn't they be
like
escorted away?
How on earth did the entire room not see this?
Well, isn't there a guard standing there?
It's not
Aren't
like
they the center of everybody's attention?
Yeah.
Plot armor, Jason. The script says he steals it and gets away, but it has to be obvious enough to the audience, but not obvious enough to the other characters. But can't he lift up his
I knew exactly what he was doing as soon as he hugged Elendil. As soon as he hugged him, he put his arm around him. I'm like, yeah, he stole the dagger off of him.
Well, that's
the fact that he just like almost openly hands it to her.
Well, me and Ross.
That was where I was like, oh, gosh.
Me and Ross watched this, and immediately when he hugged him, I said he stole something.
No,
yeah.
I was like, something happened.
Yeah,
he stole
Sketchy
something.
Man stealing.
Yeah, don't hug Sketchy Ben, Silver.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
They'll steal you blind.
Well, they're getting hauled off, and we get some glory shots of sailing, just people sailing.
Yeah, that break where they introduced us to Isildur, Elendil's son, made no sense.
His awesome bros who were very bro-like.
Basically there was a conversation between the queen and her husband, and they said, doesn't he have a son? He's like, yeah, he has a son who followed him into the Navy or whatever it was. And then we cut to the ship where we see these people doing, they're naval cadets, they're going through their stuff.
I mean, it was a break. It's story building for the character. I'm not super mad at the scene.
No, I'm not mad at the scene at all. I'm just questioning its necessity.
It's
To
story
me, it
building.
was like
You're
it's
talking
filler.
about no. So if you can do nonverbal character development where he's sitting there looking off into the
Oh yeah,
distance, and then an
I mean,
accident happens on the ship
and he did save the
where
one dude.
well, no, that's not the point of the scene. The point of the scene is maybe sailing isn't for me because his negligence causes a
Maybe,
problem with the
yeah.
sailing, and his friend has to catch it. And then he has to apologize because he wasn't paying attention.
Well, no,
And
no,
then that pays off later, where he's talking to his dad, and he's like, maybe I don't want to be sailor man or go into the sailor doctor business or whatever in the cliche format.
right.
So the scene sets up that. I'm not super mad at it. I'm not saying it's great. If you took it out, they're trying to set up this storyline about him not being into taking on the family sailing business, if you will. I just don't think it's that
Right.
line of story is really that interesting or big a deal, but the scene helps set
No,
that up.
it isn't.
It helps set that up later on. But yeah, that's essentially
Right. But
was
what
going on.
basically what I was getting at was to me it felt like a filler. We could have taken it out and it wouldn't have had an impact one way or the other.
It
We
builds
still
on
know that he followed his
it builds on
he
a
followed his
thread.
dad into the service, and he still could have had a conversation with his dad later where he's like, yeah, I'm not so sure that I wanted to do the sailing stuff, but
It builds on a story.
I wasn't mad at
I'm
it. It was
fine with
just
it.
it felt out of place.
Well, the only thing to set aside there is it lasts like a minute or two, this scene. But the stupid part is, like, they have this whole ship set that they're using. It's like, how
Have
much
this
money is
2-second
going
scene,
on? How
yeah.
much CGI to show them sailing through the sea? Like, how much cash just to do a minute scene or whatever? Like that's more of the
It
okay.
was so
Was
cool
this
though.
really?
It felt like high
Well,
adventure.
high adventure. Everybody, they're going on an adventure. Yeah, glory shots. Ross, isn't it exciting that Numenor feels very Greek?
Look, as someone who's not read the books, who's only watched the trilogy of Lord of the Rings films and one or two of the Hobbit movies, it makes sense. They're island people, but at the same time, why the hell are there ruins on Numenor? This should be at the point of their height, right? And also, they
Should be at
can't
the height
hire a
of their
guy to clean
power,
the
yeah.
shrubs off the statues.
You know that's funny. You kept pointing out, it's like, how stupid! Clean your stupid. Like, why are there ruins on this island? Because in my expectation, it feels like they thought, well, this is the same culture that you saw in Gondor, right? And Gondor was ruins.
Right.
So visually, you're going to think, oh, well, it's the same people, so they have to do similar architecture. They have to do similar things so that the audience is see, it's Gondor people. But the problem is, Gondor was a kingdom in decline. This is a kingdom at its height, at its glory at this point. So you don't need to go wink, remember ruins and the gun. It's like, no. Like, this isn't the crappy, like, worn down statues. These are like the gleaming statues that should be of like, this is what they would look like.
What they should have been, yeah.
What they should have been. I'm sorry, Silver. What was that?
I was just gonna say, like, with the whole architecture, especially when it was like panning across the whole area when they first arrive. Yeah, that main building that they go to with the big long sort of bridge thing going out. I'm like, wait, this is just Gondor. They even have the tree at the top.
Minas Tirith, yeah.
Like the white tree, and they even allude to like, oh, the white tree.
Well, the white tree would be there
or whatever. I'm like,
that's where the white tree comes from. They literally get a sproutling from it, and that's where they end up planting it in Minas Tirith. So it's fine to show the white tree. It's just clearly
the building have to look the same.
Well, they want to invoke images of the films that everyone likes in your head. They want to be like, see, remember these things, remember that. It's just, similar culture. I don't blame him for it. It's just, well, yeah, Ross had an interesting point where it seemed very crowded and overgrown, and then they go, you go out to like countryside, and it's like, why is everybody packed in there? Don't you think they'd spread out a little bit?
Yeah, or at least have the stuff that isn't crowded look like a farm, because that's what you would do as an island. I mean,
Well, and it's a big island is the
but
weird thing. Why is everybody like it is like I don't know how to relate it size wise, but you'd have to think of something like a Great Britain sort of thing. Like it's a large island.
Yeah.
It's you're not talking a wee little thing. But yes, they're this is where everything are going. Well, after spending a lot of money and having a moment where they're pushing ships ashore, Queen Muriel is having a conversation with Elendil, our glorious captain, who seems like a know-nothing character.
Tells him something, I have a job for you to do, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, she wants him to spy on her.
Well, and there's a lot of like implied distrust of the elves in this.
Yeah.
See, in my experiences, well, and she questions like his name,
his loyalty.
Yeah, and it's it was an interesting like. It causes a lot of weird complications because at this point they wouldn't distrust the elves; they would distrust the elves later. But they've rushed that ahead of time to imply that there's sort of innate bigotry and they don't trust the elves anymore. And then she's like, "Oh well, Elendil, isn't that elvish? Like that's uncommon. Are your loyalties different?" And it's like, what do you mean loyal? First of all, how is his name his fault? Wouldn't you be questioning the loyalty of his parents more than him? Like he didn't name himself. It's like, oh, I don't know about that name of yours, Elendil. What are your loyalties? It's like, how's that his fault?
Friend of elf.
I don't trust that. Just
well, your name means traitor. So I know you're going to stab me in the back, even though you didn't give yourself that name.
Well, it feels like they're building in this weird artificial tension between everybody who's talking about things. Galadriel talking to people, Halbrand talking to people, Elendil talking to Muriel. There's this awkward tension. It's like everything, and maybe they're trying to set up that there's a tension in the kingdom overall, and she's questioning him. But it's like every scene they write has this. It's almost like they're going like, oh well, there's this conflict with everybody, and it's tiresome. It's like, why is everybody so abrasive all of the time? And it's not even like clever dialogue. They're just like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Well, I don't trust you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's like they're trying to get that Game of Thrones vibe, and it's just not providing it at all.
And then she gives him a promotion. He gets to be more fancy captain. And then we get a map shot, and we go to Arendir, hot Arendir with his awesome fade, and they're having an argument over there's a tree in the way. It feels like I'm being over picky about the show, but it's like there's an obvious element as they start building up to this tree where they're like, oh, well, we're going to have to take it down and everything. And I know I'm skipping through some dialogue, but nothing interesting happens. But it's like, we're going to have to cut through this tree. It's like, if you're digging this ditch and you have this long running project where you're cutting through the landscape, you wouldn't go, maybe we should go around the tree. When you got to the tree, you would have planned passing it well ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because it's huge. Well, it's right there.
Normal people would.
But these are orcs. Maybe they're just big idiots. Don't ask where Adar is. Maybe he should have told them.
Also, they lean on the cliche of every elf is like super in tune with nature and a tree hugger, which isn't true. Like the elves of Lothlorien, maybe. But they
all love nature. What do you mean?
Every single one of them. It's the cliche. All elves are the Native Americans where they touch the trees and they feel their spirits. And so there's like this.
I go off the Rankin and Bass. Yeah.
The thing is that Tolkien never wrote his elves to be, tree huggers.
Some of them are.
Yeah, they shepherded the forest or whatever. they had reverence for it, but they used wood.
I mean, the
They
Sindarin.
built stuff out of wood.
But we're talking about Noldor,
so they would have cut down
who
trees.
sailed across and built massive cities and all of these. We're not talking about the Sindarin,
Yeah.
who lived in woods and were in tune with nature. There's totally different types of.
Well, even the Sindarin, it's not like they didn't use wood. They made bows. That it wasn't, they made stuff out of wood. They still did that. They realized wood was a valuable building material, and they used it. It's
And
not.
For all intents and
It's so
purposes,
stupid to have them like, oh, we can't cut down a tree.
but even besides that, for all intents and purposes, they're slaves. And it's like, how many slaves are going to stop and be like, this tree is sacred and deserves to be here. We should go around. And it's like, no. And it's like, okay. And so a really weird scene, like, that makes no sense logically to me, where the orc shows up and gives him water and then hits him. Like it's weird. It's almost like he's tricking him. He's like, here's some water. I like you, wink. And then he sits and drinks it suspiciously and nothing happens. And then the orc's like, psych, and starts hitting him. It's like, well, you could just beat on him without giving him water. Like, I don't know why this is.
Well, no, he cut the one dude's throat.
And with the tiny little cut. That's not very deep.
Yeah.
The very baby cut.
But it killed him somehow.
Yeah, once the last guy started drinking it.
Well, it just
it was the last guy.
It's like, what kind of trick is this? That's not a trick. The trick would be he gives him water and it's rancid. Or he gives, or he's like, here, I'll give you water, and just starts, here's water, and he's punching him. But instead, he's like, everybody get a good gulp, and me act like I'm being benevolent, and I'll wait for you to finish. He's like, psych. And it's like, but they got a drink. It's weird. Like, this is a weird.
Yeah, but he killed that one guy.
Malicious trick to do.
Can I point out, too?
Why waste your time? Go ahead.
That it's really weird that, like, when he's cut that guy's, like, neck with his sword or whatever, it's like it's not very graphic, which that's fine. But then later, when spoiler alert, when they let the warg out, it's like ripping people's guts out of their body. Like, what? Why? What? Did you just not have the makeup crew on hand that day to do the neck wound? Like, what's happening? Like, it's just so weird.
I honestly thought what was going to happen was his head was going to roll off.
Yeah.
And it was just some tiny little cut on the side, and I was like, okay.
I mean, that's literally like local disaster preparedness level makeup. Like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, it's just so weird.
When we're practicing our preparedness for disaster. Yes, it is flesh wound. Yeah, well, he kills the guy, and then he's like, oh, I'll cut the tree down, and he goes with his really bad looking axe. And then he looks off at the sulfur fields, the really horrible landscape, sulfur fields.
That axe would have gotten stuck in the tree on the first swing, and he never would have gotten it back out.
Yeah, but there's Aaron.
Oh, but he's an elf.
He's super awesome. One thing that should have been pointed. I'm confused to what the visual design of this scene is. Can anybody help me with this? So, it's implied when they pull back and they give you an outside scene, because Ross immediately was like, how did they not see the cloth over this ditch that they're digging? But on top of that, the ditch that they're digging is causing this rend in between the tree line, where it's like you could see from miles away that clearly there's this like awful, ugly cut that's like killing everything around it. One thing I'm at least more confused by, which, as obvious as it is that something's happening over here, are they just deliberately cutting through in between the tree line? Because it implies that the ditch is literally creating sulfur fields.
Yeah. That's well, I think that kind of goes along with how in the previous episode that cow goes too close to that city where they dug the prison pit in and like stole everybody.
Yeah.
And killed them. Then it has like black milk. So like,
well, that cow should be dead,
I realize there's.
Well, there's no way that cow should be alive with that black milk. But go ahead.
No, well, number one, yes, but like, So I guess the writers are like, well, I mean, it shows in Lord of the Rings, that they have a corrupting influence. It's like, yeah, from the industry they do. Like, do you not like? Yeah, the Uruk-hai made and the orcs around Saruman's joint made it all look crappy because they were cutting down the trees and like doing heavy industry. What do you?
Well, it's
How did sulfur
implied.
pits appear from orcs digging a ditch?
Well, right, but it's implied that they're being clandestine about how they do it. They're not running around on top. They're sort of building and going forward into the ditches they go. There's no like industry going
Yeah.
around them as far. I mean, to be fair, we don't know what they're doing at night, but it seems like maybe this is nitpicky, but it's so obvious that they're cutting around the trees that it's like, how could anyone not observe this anyway? Dragging out this commentary. Anyway,
I mean, maybe they
trees.
just cut this trench right into the Middle Earth version of Yellowstone, but which would give a cool opportunity for like some poor idiot to like use his pickaxe right into like a horrible geyser. Yeah, like that'd be kind of a cool visual, I guess. But to me, it seemed like it implied a corruption that the orcs bring, which makes no sense to me. But that's just me.
Then we get Galadriel's jumping around the buildings, and she escaped despite the Elendil immediately found her. It doesn't tell us how she escaped.
Yeah, he was just chilling. He knew right where she'd go.
Well, it doesn't even tell us. It's not like she slipped the guard or she got out of a jail cell. She's immediately like jumping along the rooftops like Assassin's Creed style.
And Assassin's Creed Lord of the Rings Odyssey.
Well, and then he's like, well, I could tell the yeah. Well, and he's like, I could tell the guards you're here. And she's like, your words will never manage to escape your throat. And she like twirls her. I'm so sick and tired of every time somebody picks up a weapon in the show, they twirl it. It's like, look how cool this is.
That's how you know they're really cool and they're really good with it.
Yeah, because they have to flourish.
Someone them to accidentally cut their finger. Ew.
Well, and then they have this once again abrasive conversation between the two of them, and then he speaks elf, and she finds out his name, and she immediately trusts him. She's like, "Oh, interesting. You speak elf? Yeah. Amazing." And then they go to travel to this library where apparently there are no roads in a very industrious people and on an island that's very industrious.
Yeah. They have to go across this picturesque field on their horses and gallop along the beach.
Gallop along the beach
with a really funny face.
Very awkward scene of her
that
smiling.
With her, that was so off-putting.
It just doesn't feel natural, and it feels awkward.
Her creepy smile as she's like,
I don't, because Morphin Clark is not an unattractive girl. She's a pretty girl, but it's like maybe it's just the angle. Like, film her at a better angle. Give her more of an opportunity to lean into her attractiveness. Where it almost seems like she's like, like that's the impression you get from her smile.
Yeah.
She's like the Wicked Witch riding on a broom. She's like, I'm gonna get you. But rushing along, Halbrand is trying to be a smith. He super wants to be, and they're like, you can't. You have to have accreditation from the guild.
What I don't get is why didn't he say, well, how do I get one of those? Because you would understand that there are guild trials and stuff. There's a way to get guild membership. If you're such a great smith,
Jason, what they want is a scene where he steals it, where he has a confrontation with people. They don't want a reasonable situation.
Yeah, I realize that it's basically so that we could start seeing Halbrand's actual evil side.
Well, in confrontation,
he doesn't know Jimmy Hoffa of Numenor. That's the problem.
Well, on top of that, they also wanted to add, because if you recall, he gets confronted the racism towards immigrants, where immediately we don't trust
you. He's a low man.
Well, and he implies he's there to steal their.
He's not one of the Numenorians.
He's like, oh, I'm going to steal your women too, and they're like, raw, and then he's like, oh, yeah, they do say, bruh, Silver, what's your problem? Huh?
Nothing. It's just hilarious. And he buys drinks for everyone.
He does. I don't know where he got the money. Did he steal it?
The money, I don't know how he has.
Maybe
I
they
have
give
no
him a little
idea. He's just like,
stipend.
next round on me.
Maybe Queen Muriel's his sugar mama. You don't know.
I would have liked to have seen that elaborated in the plot, honestly.
Well, you're very
True.
needy. I don't know what your deal is.
I need, you know what? Show not tell, but show me the sugar mama moment.
Just give me a little bit, just a smidge.
A little wink, and she grabs his butt, and she's like, "Go out there, good looking."
Let's go get you that PlayStation 5.
He'll pay for the next round.
Anyway, he steals the thing so that they could have a moment where everybody tries to beat him up, and he's like, "Oh, there's more to this guy." That meets the guy. Whoa! He breaks the guy's arm. Like, it immediately goes awkwardly dark for some reason. And then the guards show up, and they're like, "We're putting you in prison." And it's like, well, he was just assaulted in the. You know what? Fine. I mean, I guess he stole it, but they did try and assault him, and now the guards are like, "Well, you won the fight, though. We're not happy with it." Anyway.
Well, it's not like the guards were there to see him being assaulted. For all they knew, he attacked them first.
And that's probably
one guy attacking
that's
like
definitely
6
what
people.
they're going to say. Yeah,
It doesn't. Mega racism in this. Mega racism on Newman. They're at the library.
It would be nice if you'd have a moment where he's like, "No, wait, you don't understand." At least that line.
Or lean in on the smooth talking. Convince me there's more to him. Smooth talk the audience. Woo me into thinking something different than what I might be suspicious of. You know? Anyway, they go to the library.
Beat up 4 guys. You couldn't take out the
guards. No. She pulls out this symbol that she's known about for like 1,000 years. It was carved into her brother, and she found on the top of a mountain in the snow this weird symbol that she's known about for a long time, has never reflected on what it might mean. It's just chicken scratches as far as she's concerned, even though she's obsessed with the symbol and is desperate to find it everywhere. Anyway, they find Elendil pulls out this parchment, and he's like, "Here's something we got from some orcs," and it's same symbols on it. I don't know how that sparks her idea to look at the map and go, "Holy crap, it's a map. The symbol that I've known about for 1,000 years is a depiction of geographical location on the map."
What it was
like
they actually had some dark speech written around the symbol that said that this was the plan to be enacted if Morgoth ever fell, and it was to be enacted by his successor. And that's when she looked at it and it basically said, go to this place. And that's when she matched it up with the map of the Southlands and said, "Oh my gosh, this is a place, not
You're giving her way too much credit. This is one of the bigger dumbassery things in the show.
No, it is. It totally is. There's
clearly the
any
bumps
number
on
of times when she was looking at a map, she could have said, "Hey, wait a minute, this ring of hills
clearly
right here
it looks like a mountain on the flippin' symbol. Clearly,
that's you. Yes, you're right. It does. I'm not saying what I'm saying is that they actually did have a reason for her to look at a map at that point. She should have seen it way before then. Way before. But they did have the black speech stuff.
No. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. There's no way she couldn't have figured this out ahead of time. And now this dumbass who nobody likes looks at a symbol and figures it out because there happens to be a map here. Because, they wrote something down. It's like, well, go to this place. Every orc in the world looks at that symbol and figures out where they're supposed to go because they're all supposed to unite somewhere. She can't bloomin' see the map when she's known about it for 1,000 years. There's no time where she sat and reflected on what the symbol might mean, what it might look like. Oh, this looks like a clearly obvious mountain range and a geographical shape on a map that's very familiar to everybody who lives on this earth. Bullshit.
It's interesting that they had to have some symbol because orcs are not known for their brilliance.
Obvious.
And of course they, you know, they could all figure this out, so why couldn't she?
Because she's stupid. No, I'm not. Here, let me be
smug.
Let me be cruder. She is a massive retard.
No, she's pretending to be. Remember?
Our insufferable, abrasive retard. It's no. Hey, everybody's Harfoots. Yay. Because hobbits are, no, legally.
Somehow these are the least offensive things on the show, and I kind of thought it would be the opposite, if I'm honest.
Well, it's just like you're supposed to be endeared by the hobbits. You're supposed to be like, oh, yay, it's like
they're annoying.
Yeah, I don't feel anything for that.
Every time we switch to what the hobbits are doing, I want to go somewhere else.
Well, if you recall the controversy surrounding the hobbits, where there was a bunch of backlash from Ireland because they implied that they're presenting Ireland as like dirty, low people. The Irish Times.
Well, they're just grub people that live in the earth.
Yeah, essentially, the Irish Times wrote about the show and implied that it was offensive towards Irish people.
Yep.
So, yeah, culturally offensive. Everybody, you could have made him English, give him an English accent or whatever.
Well, whatever. No, they're Irish. Can't you tell?
And we find one of the worst parts about the Harfoot society, where they're insufferably awful and what'd you say, hypocritical? Because there's this, they have this like ceremony or whatever, where they hang out and they're like, nobody walks alone. Nobody walks alone. Nobody walks alone. And then they go on and he explains to everybody all of the people that they left behind. And that I guess your memory.
They chant like we wait for them. You left them.
No, we wait for them. Shush.
No, symbolically. So it's implied that we wait for you in our memories, that we keep you alive in our memories. We don't leave you behind in our memories, but we will leave you behind. Literally, we will leave you behind on purpose. It's confusing.
Mostly because it's funny.
Oh yeah, it's just like, and then they talked about they do this thing about how people died, that like telling the story of people that died along the way, and people are crying and stuff. And then he shit talks some guy who died in a funny way, and it's like, oh well, maybe we'll remember people in a non-positive format.
Well, and then you see that like the one little friend of Nori, like all her family is just dead, like she's just alone, and you're like, oh. And it's like, meanwhile you're shit talking the next person on the list. You're like, well, that's super chill. I'm really glad you did that.
Remember that idiot?
It's just such a weird thing. Haha, what a dummy. Anyway, moving on.
We will leave you behind, by the way. We're super gonna do it. What an awful society.
We think it's funny.
Well, it's almost like a Machiavellian sort of society. It's like, if you're a burden, we will leave you. Like immediately.
It's pretty brutal.
Like screw off.
You got a paper cut. We will leave you.
Yeah, precisely.
No weakness.
This is where the hobbits fall apart, or the proto hobbits fall apart for the story. It's like they were such a tight knit community. They knew everybody. They knew everybody's business. They were always helping each other. This should have been, look, nobody walks alone, because we all pitch in and help out.
No, they don't.
But no, it's like, no, nobody walks alone except for that guy who fell behind, and we just left him there. Exactly. It's like we're not really a good community. because we totally hate everybody, and see y'all later.
Well, it's Harfoot dog eat dog. It's just
Yeah.
Hey, look, it's a rough society. And they're scared by the big people. I'm scared by them. Good Lord.
Not Gandalf, like he's just an autistic, like numbskull, just wanders in and then starts a fire because he doesn't understand fire.
He doesn't understand bending over to not get caught in the net.
Yeah. Well, he like puts the map over the fire to see the constellations he's obsessed with because he got yeeted from space or something. And it starts a fire on the map, and then he's like costed, like flinging it around, like and it's like so he's just stupid.
Turned from the cave.
Yeah, he's just stupid.
It's like, all right. And then they have this debate about like, what do we do with him? He's like, he's your responsibility, but you have to walk at the back with your sprained ankle because nobody walks alone except for you're in the back because there's a good chance you're going to be left behind.
We're definitely going to leave you behind, by the way.
Heavily implied. Then we're brought to Elendil having dinner with Isildur and Arian. She's a made-up character. She's not from the lore, by the way. They just have fabricated her after thin air, so that they could have. If I recall in an interview, the actress, which I don't blame, she does a fine job with the character, but the effort was to create more femininity in their family, I guess.
Mm.
And it's like they're supposed to be leaders, they're supposed to be like stalwart individuals, but instead they kind of diminish Isildur in a way with their storytelling. They kind of present him as unsure, and he doesn't want to follow dad in the ship business or whatever. And he ends up taking off like I'm upset with you, dad, and then runs off. And on the other hand, she's like gonna be an engineer or something because we need more women in STEM and we need to demonstrate that like girls in science or something.
She got accepted to the Builders Guild.
Yeah. And it's like, well, of course the girl, it's like if there was space travel, she would be an astronaut in this show. That's how they would present her. Because because we need to show that she's super smart and capable compared to everybody else. And it's just, I see what you're doing. I see you.
Rhett loves it.
No, I
see he sees it and he's a big fan. Keep doing it.
Every girl has got to be like a scientist, like beakers in the back or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Galadriel goes to see Halbrand in prison, and
Halbrand.
Well, and she talks to him about stuff, and she's like, "Why are you here?" And he's like, "Oh, got in trouble with the locals." And she's like, "Oh, Halbrand!" Like suddenly they're best friends, and she's like, "That's just like you."
My favorite part.
You. Well, and before that, there was this really abrasive, like, "Oh, well, we're not friends." Like literally, she says, "We're not friends. We met at sea because we were stranded." She completely disowns him.
Yeah.
And now it's like, "Oh, that's just like you, Halbrand." Yeah. The sea is always right.
That's my Halbrand.
That's my Halbrand. The sea is always right, by the way. Even when it murders you and then like upchucks weird crap onto your shore. Breaks your ship in half. It's weird. It's weird. But we'll move on from the sea is always right, where she has a conversation with him and she looks at his little pouch and she's like, "Oh, I recognize that symbol. You're the king of the Southlands." And he's made no indication whatsoever. Like you could have stolen it. It just could be a symbol of the royal family. He has a little shit bag around his neck. And suddenly she's like, "Well, you're the ruler." He's like, "No." And she's like, "No."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She's like,
"Clearly you're in charge.
I'm not the hero you're looking for."
She's like, what did she say? She's like, "Oh, you said earlier that your people have no king." "Well, that's because you are the king." Wait, what? How'd you connect that?
Well, she like imposes.
Well, she's right in a way.
Well, that's not the point. She doesn't know that, and she imposes upon him. She imposes upon him the idea that he is the rightful ruler of the Southlands. That's like if Jason had a shirt that had the Union Jack, and I was like, "Oh, you're the King of England." Like, no, and I was like, "No, I'm pretty sure." You look like the King.
Why did you tell me?
We see Muriel go to visit her dad and say something implying there's a prophecy about elves
Apparently,
coming.
there's some prophecy about an elf coming, and if this is the prophecy that for some reason Numenor is going to sink into the sea, something of that nature. So we already know why Numenor sank into the sea.
No, we don't. Why are you reading into stuff that we don't own? Stop doing that. Quit.
Way ahead of yourself.
Amazon has not purchased that IP, so you need to not read that.
I don't. So we know what Tolkien had intended, and I shouldn't say intended. We know what Tolkien wrote about, Numenor sinking into the sea and all that stuff. And I did wonder when this came out how it was that they were going to have the Numenorians become the Black Numenorians and try to invade Valinor and all this stuff in order to have the gods sink Valinor. And it's like, well, okay, there must be some. This actually tells me that they had a different plan for
well,
the
that
destruction of
takes
Numenor.
place over a long
not
period
actually
of time. That
Yeah,
event,
it did. It took place over centuries, and that's why I was sitting there going, that can't be how it happens here, because we don't have centuries of time span here.
No, they're condensing everything. Like everything's jumbled. The timeline is just, it doesn't matter. We're moving on to the Harfoots. We're getting way ahead of ourselves predicting stuff that's not even going to happen in the season. It's not even happening in the second one. They're struggling to pull the cart. Big man help pull cart. Moving on. Like nothing really. Like oh, he's gonna help us. It's like he could run with the cart. I would be shocked if he couldn't throw it on his shoulders and run with it. Anyway,
dude, get up and start fucking.
The orc slaves unite and have a tug of war, and then there's an attempt to escape, and they all start fighting each other. And there's this really funny moment where this girl's just hitting the dirt because they're supposed to be trying to escape. And so instead of the chain,
she was the Yoko Ono of that group.
She's in the back going. Could you try? Could you try to sing on key, Yoko? Could you try?
No, I am being an artist. Shut up.
That's my art.
There's my art. Well, they have an action scene. A warg shows up. There's a lot of scuffling and pulling, and a guy gets shot with an arrow. And then mysterious, like, I guess.
Yeah, some
veiled, misty figure doesn't get focused somewhere into screen. And he shows up, and it's like, oh, it's the cool guy that, the orcs are following. So it's like, and they call him Adar, and it's like, oh, is this maybe Sauron? Is this maybe Sauron? And he's showing up. But he stays out of focus, so we don't know who he is. But they do, well, they say Adar, but we haven't seen this individual, and we haven't presented him too much yet. So
it would make more sense if he was Adar, or if Adar was Sauron.
Well, I think the show wanted to leave a bunch of, what would you call it? Red herrings. They wanted you to think, oh, is it the Wizard Man? Oh, is it this other person? Maybe Hellbrand. Who knows? Is it Adar? It seems more likely Adar. It fits to this character because they want to give you the sort of like you're second guessing their red herrings, so that when they do get a reveal, then it surprises you.
Right. Wasn't Adar one of Sauron's names, even?
I don't recall. I don't think that's the name he presented the elves with. I forget what it was.
Oh
I don't
no.
know.
No.
I think it's a fictional. I think it's made up for
trying
the
to-
show, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's a made up one. I was just checking. I was trying to remember. What did he call himself? He was the Lord of Gifts.
Anatar?
Anatar. That was what it was.
I think so.
I was getting Anatar and Adar mixed up.
Yeah, but that's a character who presents himself in a different way later in a later time. Like he's a different character when he goes to Numenor and he kind of undermines them. And it's a whole thing. He does a lot of shapeshifting, if you
anyway.
will, throughout the
Yeah.
timelines.
That's kind of one of his things was he wasn't always the warrior. He was smooth talker, he undermined people. He did a whole bunch of stuff, and
at this time,
whatever, they're not doing that.
Well, at this time, yes. If you go far enough back, he represented. He would often present himself as like this great giant wolf. Weirdly enough.
Yeah.
But yes, we've come to the end of our review of episode 3. Ross loved it. I know he did. It's one of his favorite shows.
Oh, I mean, it was perhaps some of the finest television I've ever seen.
Jason, conclusions about our 3rd episode? It did feel like a lot happened.
At this point, it's more piled higher and deeper.
Sure.
Perhaps
specific.
It really didn't seem. You're right. There was a lot of stuff that happened, but it really didn't seem to have pushed the plot forward much.
No. Maybe some character development, but
a little bit maybe, but not in the characters that actually matter.
Sure, but it's just they developed. They gave her.
It's kind of funny that Sauron and Elendil seem the two characters that are the most rational.
Elendil's supposed
Everybody
to be
else is
in the book. He's supposed to be this great, noble man, and
he's a great ruler and king. Yeah.
Yeah, they're giving him this like dad and family problems silliness, and it's Ross.
The single dad angle they're giving it.
They are. What do you think?
Yeah, it was kind of, we get to see Numenor. It was kind of, I don't know, I liked the ships of it. I liked that they made kinda, but I don't know. I like that they have painted marble, but it's just, I said it last episode, but everything's trying to fit together, but doesn't quite. It's just a little off everywhere. And that adds up to a lot. The main problem is that the characters are written just really, really badly, really unlikably. It's really bad when the Harfeet are the most likable people in the show.
And even then, they're not really likable.
Not much, but they're, compared to everybody else, good Lord. You have Blank Slate Elf Man who just does blue steel to the camera. And then you have, poor Galadriel's been turned into the most unlikable a-hole I've ever seen in my life on screen. My God.
I wonder if and just bear with me because I have a question to ask. I wonder if there's this, the writers wrote Galadriel with this implication that you had seen the other show, so you're there's always already an implied benefit of the doubt with her motives and what she's trying to do, so that when she says stuff, and she gets abrasive, you're supposed to be on her side. When she goes, you need to give me a ship, you can't keep me as a prisoner, that you're expected to be like, yeah, you can't keep her as a prisoner because you're supposed to be there with her, you're supposed to be going along with her. And that there's this that they didn't do the groundwork to help you carry along with that. They just implied or expected you to have that attitude, and instead we don't, because it's a different person and she acts different. Am I trying to give it a lot more credit than it deserves, or what do you think?
That's actually probably a pretty good theory. Is like, well, we already know that Galadriel. Like, we want you to know, like, and I'm sure that like what we see what she becomes, but here's how she got there. So you know that her intentions are good. Like, but it's just like, yeah, but the problem with writing an elf in this world is that they're all old. Like, they all have been around for a long time. So it's
They
like,
they already
unless you,
they already kind of are who they are.
yeah. So unless you make one up, like they did in the Hobbit movies, like why? But see, they got to have people that, oh, hey, that's a name. That's a name we know. Especially like in those first couple episodes where it's like, hey, Galadriel, that's Elrond. These are names we know. And now they're getting
Yeah.
into the names that maybe people who've read some of the books will know. But it's like, but then that's so foolish, because I would stay away from anything from the books if I was them, outside of like really basic world building things, because people are just going to be like, yeah, that's not right. What you're doing is incorrect. Like,
Yeah.
that's not how this person was. Because as Rhett kind of jokingly mentioned at the beginning of the discussion, is when you start comparing it to the actual rest of the even within the Lord of the Rings trilogy books, but even outside, like the Silmarillion, the Book of Lost Tales, all that stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
what little I know, it falls apart because number one, the
Yeah.
times aren't correct. Like, how is this the same Isildur that's going to fight in the War of the Ring? Right? Is that
I
what they're implying? This is the same guy? Because the world's
Yeah,
not even round yet. Like, are you telling me he lives? This happens in the next 100 years, and then Gondor is this great nation? No way, not a
right.
chance. Like, and so it's just, I don't know why they keep. And the problem is like, the easy defense is to go like, well, but this isn't those. It's like, yeah, but they want the rub that IP gives them. That's why they paid $500 million for
Yeah,
it.
but they don't want it held up to the
So
same
I'm
standard.
sorry,
You're right.
right? But it's gonna have to be.
Yes.
Like,
If you
it can't not be.
Well, that's the rule when you make something based upon an IP. If you're gonna get if you're gonna pull in the credit for using that IP, you're also going to be held to that IP standard. Like, that's the rule.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use the
Mhm.
Lord
Yeah,
of the Rings
definitely.
IP and you want the credit, you want the rub of the popularity of the show, then you're going to have to be held to the standard of Lord of the Rings. You can't just go, hey, everybody, we got Lord of the Rings, everybody come and love it because it's Lord of the Rings, and then change everything and ruin it and be like, well, that's not Lord of the Rings. And it's like, how dare you? It's like, you want people to think this is Lord of the Rings, and then you want to change it and ask us to pretend that's not what you're doing. There's a rule when you use IPs, and you can't do that.
You know, it's like Ross said. If they wanted to do this, they should have made Galadriel, they should have made Elendil, they should have made Elrond, they should have made all those characters background characters
Mhm.
and come up with a story that fits in this time period. Like, Galadriel takes an elf aside and says, "Hey, I think there's something going on in the Southlands. Um, you know, I want you to go down and check it out." And he, gets a team of people together. Maybe he runs into some people along the way that he pulls in and helps him out, and makes this a story that could plausibly have fit in with Middle Earth, that gave, where the characters uh, found out that um, Sauron had created the One Ring, and he was getting his forces together, and they had to go in, sneak into Mordor, and then they sneak back out, and they go warn the free people of Middle Earth, who then get together
Well,
their
right,
armies
right.
for
It
the
could have been
the
done a
final
lot of better
showdown.
ways. If we're going to do a meta rewrite on how it could have been done better, we could probably save that for when we finish the
Yeah.
show. But when it comes to
Yeah.
the episode
I
in
will
and of
say,
itself, go ahead, Russ.
it is interesting that you say that, though, because like that's kind of what a lot of the games did years ago.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah,
all of them.
the War in the
Um,
North was awesome.
yeah, that's all it was what if, and the same with Shadow of War, those games.
Right.
Um, But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they wanted the rub, and I think it's detrimental to them that they did that.
It hurt them with the fans, definitely.
Very much so.
The Silver?
Yeah.
It's getting worse. I didn't think it could, but it is.
Oh, yeah.
You sweet summer child, as they say.
Yeah,
You're
it's
enjoying it
worse
less and
already.
less. Well, what are your
I bet it's not
reflections
getting
on the
any better
episode?
either.
You've been quiet compared to the other one. You're just introspective. What do you think about the episode as a whole?
As a whole, I mean, I know we already pointed it out, but it feels like the entire episode was just made to make us hate Galadriel more. I mean, I'm glad they didn't put in a bunch of the other perspective points in there. From because in the last episode we had like Elrond's whole thing, his storyline going on. We also had, forget her name, in the village with her son.
Bronwyn?
Her thing
Bronwyn.
going on. Yeah.
Bronwyn.
We didn't see him at all this episode.
Yeah.
They cut out a lot of them side stories. Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
we'll get back to them next week.
Stories. I know. I'm like, oh, next week it's gonna be their turn.
Actually,
it's gonna be great.
I think it was like half the episode before we even saw the Harfoots, before they even showed up. So it was like 30 minutes.
You're right. Yeah, there was a lot of Numenor. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And we didn't even see Elrond.
I expect them to show up first, really.
Well, which they should. Like,
no Elrond and the dwarves. But...
You know, that's something interesting that came to mind. Last episode, I was like, man, they jump around between a bunch of different plot lines. Like they jump from one thing to another to another. Like they're rushing between things to almost like like we're little kids and we're losing our attention span, and so they got to keep presenting stuff. and it's like I would prefer if they focused to try and give us sort of time to live with an element of the show, and so they spent a lot of time on Numenor, which is a good thing. They should be spending time on Numenor. It should be a central part of the story. But I got bored with Numenor, and I thought, you know what might be happening? They don't know how to write any of them to give you a lot of interesting, they don't know how to carry one plot line. So it's almost like dangling keys. They jump you around so that you don't dwell too much on one thing because it gets bad.
Because if you dwell on one thing too much, you see behind the curtain.
Well, it's like we dwelt on Numenor a lot, and it's like, oh, it's not very good though. Because I thought maybe you should focus on the timeline. Maybe you spend more time in one, or give us more time. It's like when you're spending time with the Harfoots, you're just supposed to love. It's like, you remember Lord of the Rings? Everybody loves the hobbits. Everybody loves. They're supposed to be charming. You're supposed to love them, and then it's like you're watching, and you're like, oh, I don't give a crap about these characters. Like I don't.
Yeah. So far, the characters haven't done anything to make me care about them.
I mean, they're fine. They're just like quirky, like mud people, but I don't have any connection to any of them individually. And they clearly want her to be like a pseudo Frodo, because she's got very big, bright eyes. Right. The only flaw, well, not that it's a flaw to not have blue eyes, but the one thing that Frodo had is he had very bright blue eyes, so they sort of stuck out and they were engaging. Her character has bright eyes, but they're brown, so they don't stand out as much as Frodo did in the movies, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe I'm just. It just feels like, well, we can't dwell on one subject too long because people will get bored because we don't know how to write this and keep you engaged. So we're just going to jump around. And now that they spent time in Numenor, it's like, oh, they don't know how to write. They don't know how to give you interesting stuff or engage you. And every conversation is abrasive. It's like, I don't like you. I don't like you. And okay. Can we develop connections and relationships? Anyways, Silver, anything more to add?
Nah, I think that's it.
Yeah, she's done with this. Awesome. Well, I think we've said our piece, and I appreciate you joining us for episode 3. as we're chugging along, as we're whipped to make our way through this content. And I'm the whip holder, incidentally.
Yeah, hey, you're that orc in the animated Return of the King that's singing the song.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right, left, right. Ross, keep working.
Nah, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go to war today.
Well,
Not
but
today.
the Lord of the Lash says,
I'm calling out sick from the war.
Calling out sick. We could do the.
Yeah, I'm gonna use my vacation days.
You don't get vacation days. We are a bad company, and we do not afford vacation days.
You see, we qualify to be a smaller business, so we don't have to give you diddly. So how about that, huh?
Yeah. Well, it could be worse. We could clockwork
Armies
orange you
in
into
Middle
chairs
Earth, you guys
with your eyes open. Well, we could clockwork orange you guys into chairs. With your eyes open. Force you to.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Either that or hate Mozart or something. I don't know. One of those two could be accomplished. Yes, and the Clockwork Orange characters are in Space Jam 2. Well, you know what? We appreciate you if you joined us for this outing, and hopefully you'll keep along as we journey through watching this for the first time. This is all fresh to all of us. We all refused to watch it because it looked like a piece of crap, and now that we're creating content, we're watching it. For reasons,
and we are realizing that it is a piece of crap.
Yep.
Hey,
look. Hey, let me hold off. Jason, perhaps we need to have a sit-down conversation. Now, obviously, I've had very negative things to say about it. All right, but if we are going to be fair to the show and treat it in a superficial manner, we should approach it as open as possible.
Superficial.
Well, it's like it would be very easy to sit there and go like, well, that's not Galadriel, it's bullshit. Just bullshit. Move on. And it's like, so I'm trying to.
You're right, and
have an abstract.
I am trying to divorce my.
Right, because if you judge it by the other content, it's never going to be any good.
It's like I told you with when we went and saw The Hobbit. If I divorce myself from the fact that it is The Hobbit, that it has the Hobbit name on it and stuff, I can see that it's a pretty good action movie. But if I put in there that it is The Hobbit, then I'm like, this is a terrible Hobbit movie. Right. And so I am trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying not to see into it what they're trying to, they're trying to make this connection to Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. And I'm trying. It's very hard though. and the fact that they're making the characters so unlikable just makes it that much harder to actually watch.
Okay. No. So, as you run out of here kicking to screaming, hopefully you join us with the next episode. And this will lead, once again, right into season 2 as we go upon our journey.
If you like the show, follow Rhett, Jason, Ross, and Silver, the world's most lethally stupid internet personalities, on Twitter at DGPodcast or on Instagram at DistractedGamers. If you liked or hated what you heard here today, you can email them at thedistractedgamers@gmail.com and share your feelings. Not that Jason would care, since he hasn't any, of course.
Oh my God, it's so juicy!